Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Couple of Nukes. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey, and I am currently traveling on the road. So I'm not, if you're watching, you can see I am not in my normal studio setup. So I apologize ahead of time if the video and audio quality is not as good as it normally is, but I am traveling on the road to meet up with some former guests of my show in real life for the first time. So that's super neat to get to meet the people who have been on the show and see if they're really who they said they were. So it's awesome to hang out with them. And today I have a guest with me. We're going to get into something that I think is really important, as always, serving the veteran population. We know that they have a huge rate of mental health issues, of suicide, and there is so much that can be done for that because it is a culmination of a lot of factors. Suicide and mental health isn't just from combat, it isn't just from, non-combat trauma, it isn't just from whatever it may be. It's a lot of different things. And so all the different ways we help veterans really matter. And so I'm here with the founder of Wings4Heroes.org, Lyubim Kogan. So great to have you here, and we're going to get into what you do. But first, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, just an overview.
Thanks for having me here. Really great introduction. I think, it just, you really said it all. I've been seeing the same picture for more than 4 decades, and, doing something about it was, that's what Wings4Heroes is. It's just, I think that we don't really, we underestimate what we can do in the long term. And like you said, those issues do exist. There are a lot of them, and there are more and more every day. And the system is just not able to keep up with it. So here we here we are. Yeah.
Right. And so can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
First of all, I am a civilian who is servicing the military population. The I grew up in the 70s, and when I was 5 years old, the Afghanistan war started, and it lasted until I was 16, almost graduating from high school. And I moved to the States in early 90s, and I really had an amazing journey because the United States for me was the perfect place. I came as a teenager, and I had a lot of things that I wanted to do, and I found a place that really, like, if you want to do sports or you want to do academics, it's just like you can do it your own way. There was not like a set system that you had to fit in or not fit in at all. And I had a really awesome journey for 24 years in the States. And then in 2015, I ended up in Ukraine, and I saw exactly the same thing. And I took over a nationwide infrastructure company. And it was actually at one of our gas stations that I saw a double amputee roll out in the wheelchair, and the guy went towards the highway. And I remember, thinking that there is nothing there. Like, you and I, we could not walk. And just to put it in perspective, we were 25 miles away from Hungarian and Slovakian border. So it's all big trucks, it's a lot of heavy machines moving stuff across the border. And maybe 20 minutes, no more than that, we had like a huge storm came. And I took one of our pickup trucks, and we went and found that guy. We just followed where he rolled, and he was on the side of the road, all splashed and wet, and nobody stopped. And we put the wheelchair in the back and put the guy inside, and he was in such bad shape, man. He had like the old
Right.
uniform, like there was just a skeleton in there, and that there's like not much life left in that man. And then when after, just to give you numbers, the war in Ukraine started back in 2014. It's when Russia annexed Crimea, and nobody really said anything because the world was in fear of escalation. They didn't know how far it's going to go. And the escalation came in 2022. And basically, in the first 3 years, that war produced more than 100,000 amputees.
Wow.
And when I was thinking about one guy and starting and doing something, that numbers they like took off and surpassed any idea or plan that I had. And it was exactly when we flew our first guy, and just, the idea was I wanted to take combat veterans that had amputations and bring them. I run this program in Turkey because we have the beach, we have the mountains, we have really awesome culture, food, everything works here. And I have a community, and community is people who we fly paragliders. That's my sport. It's like a little plastic bag, that hangs above your head, and you have
Yeah.
little strings, and there is no fuselage, no engine. And when I flew the first time, I got really scared. Like I was really freaking out. And my sport was ski jumping. And I thought that relatively compared to other people, I'm more brave. And it was not the case. And I thought, when I was researching this, I did learn to fly, and I learned to fly. I have a professional license. I can fly passengers. And my idea was that if we take somebody who experienced loss of limb and we go off the cliff, like the subconscious mind kicks in and it's thinks that we are going to die. It shuts off everything else. You don't have any other issues. So literally my idea was that I wanted to take somebody who had amputations, a combat veteran, and I wanted to put them through a controlled traumatic experience. And if you read psychology, a lot of psychologists say that for people who are really depressed, who are experiencing like deep sense of loss, there could be one of that it has to be like immediate, and it has to be really, there has to be a lot of sensory involved, and that can bring somebody back to life. And I thought that there will be a moment when they'll forget that they're missing a leg or two. And it actually happened. After we sent the first guy, we were sitting watching tapes, and all the volunteers were like, here's the moment, because he doesn't get scared. He's been at war, and he's been in the assault brigade, and he lost a leg. So he really doesn't care about, like, if you ask him, he always says yes. And it's like, I don't care. Like, I cannot repeat word for word on your show, but he just doesn't really. And
Right.
that was, there was a really successful thing when it worked. But then what I found out that they need more, and more is physical therapy. So we're continuing the story, and what makes Wings4Heroes unique is that I thought, let me follow this one guy. He was 20 years old when he volunteered to go to defend his country. And then within the year, he lost his leg. Well, he was 20 for 10 days. He was a teenager, and then he turned 20, and then he volunteered. Anyways, I thought, like, when he came back, there was nothing. The guy's just sitting at home. His dream was to play soccer. He wanted to be a soccer player, professional. That's anything. It was just, till now, he doesn't talk about anything but soccer. It's his life. And when he came back from war, obviously soccer was out of the question. And he gained a lot of weight. He was extremely depressed. And I thought, let me just follow this guy and see what happens. So I brought him here in June of 2024. That's when we flew our first passenger. And then he went home. Well, while the way I structured the program is we have two different parts that veterans can participate in. Number one is like recreational. It started with 7 days, now it's 10 days. You just come in, it's posh. It's really, from morning to night, we're doing something. And then at the beginning of the season, I invited, number one, he's invited to every opening and closing for the recreational. If he wants to come, he can come at the beginning or at the end. So he came at the beginning, and this year, actually, the beginning was really neat because the first time we had a deaf veteran. And he's also, he was almost 3 years in the front line. And what happened was that they dropped a grenade from the drone right next to him, and it took out right side of his face. And they just stitched the ear. There is nothing. It's like, if he went to Poland and he had plastic surgery. So if he's wearing sunglasses and the hat, you can't tell. But he completely cannot hear anything on one side. And we had, some things I realized, when you see a guy or a girl who's missing a leg, like, we naturally all looking like maybe that person will need a help, some kind of assistance. Or if somebody is in the wheelchair, somebody who is with limited mobility, like, we have this subconsciously, on some level, we have empathy for that person, and we will we're willing to help. But when you have somebody who is deaf,
Mm.
first of all, they're always suffering because they have permanent imbalance in their ear. There's always some noise going on. There's
Right.
always something going on. And the second thing is that you really need, if you're standing on the side, in our case, on the right side, if he's deaf, you really needed to yell that he hears on the other side. And that's like, we had actually people complain in the hotel that somebody's shouting. The administrator called me and they came over because I put them in the hotel right next to me so I can walk over at any time. And he says, somebody complained and they went to the door and they're shouting, and they called and they said, we're having dinner. Nobody, there's one volunteer with us and we're just having dinner. We're not even playing loud music. And I said, okay, keep it down. And, it was like really bad mood because they were really not doing anything. And I'm walking out the door and I am realizing like they have to shout for him to hear. So I turn around and I go back to administrator and I say, look, listen, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you, but he's deaf. He's like, what do you mean he's deaf? I said, yeah, he's deaf. He's a veteran, he's blah, blah, blah. And he looks at me, he like turns like pale. And he said like, man, I feel so bad. He said, I'm going to go and explain it to all the guests. He said, I wish you told me before. And like, I had no clue. I couldn't tell you anything because I don't know. I'm just watching and learning and observing.
Mm.
I'm not, I can hear well. I have all four of my limbs. I just had this thing, it's like I am observing. I'm really good at, my natural talent is building processes in any operations. That's what my mind does. And we go back to number one, our first amputee. His girlfriend told me that, and the program runs, I bring 1+1. They can bring a wife, a girlfriend, a spouse, a caregiver, anybody, because that way I don't have to worry about, finding somebody. If somebody has special needs and they come with another family member or caregiver, that's like that. It's a non-issue.
Right.
So number one came with his girlfriend, and I talked to her, and she said, look, he has this personality, like he's such a strong guy. If he's in pain, he said he will drop off. He's like, we did not see him for 6 weeks. After his amputation, we came in, he said, look, please don't come back because I really need to scream and I need to cry, and I cannot do it when you're around me.
Mm.
So he sent everybody away. And he had such a great experience, when he came here for the first time, and then he disappeared, and we just lost contact. It's like one thing when we meet, we do something, but with this experiment, it was such a huge deal. We had so many people involved. He was referred to us by the governor, who found we have a service. They service the 3rd Assault Brigade, which is the oldest brigade in the Ukrainian war. They're the first ones and they're the biggest ones. And they're well funded. They have a lot of support. It's probably like the one brigade that has their guys and girls. They get everything. Like if they need to go back to a hospital, they go to capital, they go to Kiev to have surgeries or whatever. They just go in, they check in. They don't need to call. They're really well taken care of. So the governor sent us to that service, and that service gave us a guy who was a double amputee. And it was like a week or 8 days before coming here, he gets scheduled for another surgery and he cannot come. So they found us another guy who is, thankfully for our experience, he was missing only one leg, because if the first time we got a guy who was missing two legs, I don't know how we would do it, because Turkey is not, like it's really great when you plan ahead, but for the first time, yeah. For the first time, we got a perfect guy. So I'm following this guy, and what happened, he came back in April and he said, they didn't do the amputation right the first time. So he had to go back and get another one, like the part that they didn't cut off right, it started getting
Right.
infected or something. It was dying off, so they needed to reamputate. And when you do that, you need new prosthetic leg. You need to learn again. It's the whole process from the beginning. And he just dropped off. And I said, okay, cool. Let's go see my physical therapist. Let's just get you checked out. So we go to my physical therapist, and it's April. They were here 9 to 19th. We go to my physical therapist. She just sends him walking down the hall, and she is like, oh my God, Lyubim, look at how he's walking. I said, what? She says, look at his leg, the leg that he has. Like when the prosthetic leg when it's sideways, it's okay. But once he started throwing, he said, look at, he's throwing his leg like to the side. And what was happening was that he's a big, strong guy. So his muscles are super strong, but he's always standing on one leg and he's compressing the muscles on that leg to the point where they started pressing on the sciatic nerve. And the
Mm,
sciatic nerve is the longest nerve that runs from the back all the way. I
yeah.
think it goes like to the heel or somewhere. It's a really long nerve. And she says, like, he's so big and he's active, he's young. He said he can do one wrong move and he's going to become paralyzed. And I said, what do we do now? And she says, you have to bring him back for an intensive physical therapy. We have to do 30 days to see if it works. He said, we just really have, but we have to do it right now. You don't have more than like next month to bring him. And I brought him back and we did physical therapy together. We did 12 one-on-one physical therapy sessions. Then I have a swimming coach. We got him a swimming lane. He learned how to swim, and he really, wow, it was improvement in swimming. The guy who, like imagine if you have two legs, you're kind of floating evenly, but if you don't, it's really hard.
Mm,
And for him, it was like to learn how to breathe, and that he started. We have a cycling because he was here first time he got on the bike, and for 1 month, it was like watching a madman. He went so hard. He knew it was like the only chance, and he lost 10 kilos, which is like more than 20 pounds, and he got so strong that we were riding bikes on the last night. The night next day he was going home. He ripped out the pedal and here this clunk, boom, boom. Like, here's my
yeah.
pedal in the middle of the dark. So it was an incredible experience watching him, and that took more than 1 year. So what I can say right now is that I don't have big numbers. I didn't go the route, let's take a lot of pictures, raise more funds and just keep turning that movie. I was learning, and I wanted to see what it takes to go from like, I'm depressed, I don't want to be here, I'm checking out, to right
Mm,
now, he's a captain of his amputee soccer team. They played
wow.
just their first nationals. And while he was rehabbing here, he qualified for a $75,000 prosthetic leg that the government's going to pay. They already paid for it. He's already using it. So,
Nice.
for him is that like he doesn't have a knee. It's one of the big things about amputations. If they have a knee, it's like they joke between themselves. He's saying, look, you're ready for the assault brigade. But if they don't have a knee, then they cannot do a lot of things, especially like walk down the hill, because they can just
Mm.
roll over. And that new prosthetic device, it has like AI, it
Yeah,
has
stuff is getting
everything.
fancy.
Yeah, and we have our youngest volunteer is 5 years old, and she said when he gets that prosthetic leg, he can run, he can jump, and he can bike just like us. And really, he can like jump on a rock, and it would hold him. So you
That's
know,
good.
that's I think that's you kind of got the beeline of the whole.
Right. And
Did I answer? Did I answer your question,
right.
Mr. Whiskey?
Well, I have great respect for what you do because it's not often, of course, it's not something that doesn't exist, but it's not very often that we see a civilian doing so much for the veteran populace. A lot of times it's veterans supporting veterans. So I have a lot of respect for what you do because although we're all humans at the end of the day, a lot of people separate veterans from civilians as, different people. And so a lot of times it's just veterans helping veterans. But at the end of the day, it's a human issue, So I really
Yeah.
appreciate and respect what you do going out of I consider it going out of your way to serve a population that, quote, isn't your own. Of course, we're all human. And so I appreciate what you do. And so, how does, you've kind of told a little bit about what Wings4Heroes.org does. How does the process work? So, do veterans reach out to you?
So
Do family
basically,
members reach out to
basically
you?
right now, um, I took 2.5 years to see if it's going to literally fly. And then when it flew, I thought it was like, this is the end, but it was not the end, it was the beginning.
Mm,
So adding physical therapy, psychologist, adding all these little things and see how it works on a small scale and keeping tabs on everything, which is the most important thing, because by education training, I have a degree in accounting and finance, and I worked all my life in finance. So I created this process, and then I added the numbers, and I went and I looked at I compare to what, how much does it cost for other. I'm not a charity, first of all. Wings4Heroes is a mission, and the mission is about keeping the promise. And the promise, the way I see it, is that when somebody goes to defend their country, any country, I think there is East and West. That's it. There's just two sides. If you look at the barbarians, always want to come from the East, and they want to go West, and they want to take stuff. And the West is more civilized, more hardworking, further looking, more looking into the future. It's like it's a totally different game, and it's always between the East and the West. And the bullets, they start flying from the East to the West. I don't really, know thinking about a war that was started in the other direction is hard to find. In between every war and peace, there is space. And in that space is occupied by men and women who place themselves for everybody who is not a soldier, who is a civilian at home. People are living their lives. And as long as the people who occupy that space, then you and I, we can have this conversation. And if that space becomes empty, you and I cannot have that conversation.
Mm.
And I was born in a place where you could not have the conversation. Then I was left to the United States, and meanwhile, that country actually was allowed to say what, to be free. But then the East came back again, and we are going through exactly the same thing, like 50 years later. And it's when I see, or anybody sees it repeating, decades after decades, you can do two things. Number one, you can look away and pretend that you're really busy, with things, and you have other stuff to do, and there's a system and the government that has to take care of it. Or you can step in, and I just decided to step in. And in my case, I don't even think I decided. I think it found me. Like everything in my life led me to this point. And when I got to this
Mm.
point in the United States, I really had dreams, big dreams. I went to great school. I became a national bestseller. I got to speak at the United Nations with my mentor, Brian Tracy, 2015. And from there on, I green light, stay in the States and just capitalize, materialize, monetize 23 years of hard work and sacrifice. And that's, learning, building business. But I was in Ukraine and I had a chance to do something really wild. Like that thing could not work. And I thought I would try, because there are a lot of people. If it worked, then it would be great. But if it didn't work, it was a company that had more than 1,000 employees. And imagine, like, at war, if it goes away, then they would not find another. It would be really hard finding work. And I thought I can go back to the States, write more books, do more speaking engagements, grow my practice, make more money, just live a good life. Really, in the United States, life is really good. It's really comfortable. It's really predictable. It's really safe. It's really peaceful. It's all the good things. It's not like this once you live in other places. But the thing is that, like, I find that overcoming difficulties is the real satisfaction. It's not the satisfaction is adding, at some point you're just adding 0, 0, 0, comma 0, 0, 0, comma 0. You're just
Right.
adding zeros.
Yeah.
There will be no ones. It would be just zeros. And that experience, I thought it would be like a really solid one. If I stay and do it, it would not be focusing on the zeros. It would be focusing on the important things. And I think that decision changed everything, because the next thing I was standing, I see what's going on. I cannot look away. I see the results, the consequences, how civilian population of one country is suffering because one psycho decided that he wanted, to put a flag on a map. He will never go there, right? But he approved it. 40 million people, 10 million people are gone.
Yeah.
We don't know how many dead because nobody's counting, and more than 100,000 amputees. And this time it's not only men like before, it's women, it's kids.
Mm.
And you know
Yeah.
why this war is so different than any other that we had ever in the history of civilized nations? Or yeah, in the history of our world. This is the first time that the nuclear power is using nuclear power blackmail to redraw borders. There was nobody who's done it before. And the United States could have taken over the whole world, after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Okay, we are in charge. So we are we're living through nuclear blackmail and nobody's saying anything.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I am here cleaning up that mess as much as I can. Like I said, I'm useless. So you cannot send me to war because I'm going to walk around with my machine gun, look for Wi-Fi. not that bad. Not that bad, but I just think, and another thing, big thing is that I want to make a point that it's always easy to like point fingers and think that somebody else is going to do the work for you. The work that nobody wants to do, that like I'm paying my taxes, like the government and the system should do it. And I think
Mm.
that if people try to do more for causes that are important to them, and my freedom is the most important thing. Man, I ran for my life so many times from one country to another. I know what that means. I got to move to the United States because of the First Amendment. And I realized that when I was on the red carpet in Hollywood getting a award for a book, I left because freedom of speech and religion. I got an asylum from the United States. I came as a refugee to the United States. I could write in my book whatever I wanted to write, and I wanted to say whatever I could say. I started a radio show back in 2006, and I could say whatever I wanted to say on the radio. I still have accent now, then I don't know who would listen to me, but it's the only place where you can do it, nowhere else. And if we make promises as a society to men and women who go and volunteer to defend us, and we don't keep those promises, like what is going to happen if we don't?
Right.
Like,
I
once it's
agree.
broken, then it would really, really hard to backtrack. So I'm not just doing it for me. I think I had an opportunity to fulfill public service, I would say it like this. And I thought, okay, I will try.
Well, and I think I love your point because so many people are like focused on we need to end this war. What can we, this and that, and they're focused on these big global issues, but they're just a regular, person, and it's like you can't stop the war by yourself as just someone who's not a politician, right? Because that's up to them, and we have, we can use our voice to influence and help make decisions. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, okay, within my power that I have, what can I do? What can I do in my local community? Or what can, in your case, if I can't stop the war, how can I help the veterans who are coming back injured, right? It's all about what can we
Yeah.
do. So many people are focused on something that is out of their control or what they can't do, and we need to focus on what can we do to the best of our abilities to help as much as we can. So I really appreciate what you do, and I want to clarify. So you are working with international veterans. Do you have
So
veterans from
so so
America and
we
Ukraine?
it's perfect timing for the perfect question. When I was thinking about how to do it practically, I knew that if I go to the States, I had my own registered investment advisory firm. I started companies for clients. I sold companies for clients.
Mm,
I've been through the whole process. I ran a big national company, so I really understand how things work. And one of the things that I knew was that if I go to the States, I'm going to have first thing, I'm hiring lawyers who will write me a plan that will say, look, if you want to be compliant and you want to service veterans in the United States, here is the list. Here are the requirements, here are the insurances, here are the people you have to hire. And we would spend, I don't know, 3 years, 100,000 plus in just getting anything done.
mm,
And I thought, well, actually, I'm in Turkey. I saw a local pilot fly a person with an amputee. They just took a prosthetic leg and they had two assistants and they were sitting on the ground and they actually, it was really impressive how they took off. It was just so really fast and smooth. And I went up to that pilot and I said, look, this is the idea that I have. Could you fly if I bring veterans? Could you fly them? He said, yeah. I said, but we don't have a chair. He said, it's no problem. We will fly. Just we need good weather conditions and we need two assistants. And, I've flown more than 100 flights and know what I'm doing, which is, it's not a good idea to fly in them. If somebody has a prosthetic leg, fly them without a chair, because if you land the wrong way, it's bubbles, air,
Mm.
and that thing costs $75,000. I'm not talking about injuring the person, is always the worst thing, but you can break a really expensive equipment. And I was able to find somebody who agreed, and I was able to find somebody who would give us a hero here, not in the United States. But once it flew here in the not in the States, I went to the States and I found a flight site where I can do it in the States. It will be in Torrey Pines in California. They do have a chair. They have pilots, local pilots. They have insurance. They know how to fly limited mobility passengers. They can fly quadriplegics, and when you have a quadriplegic,
Wow.
this person cannot move. And Torrey Pines is right next to the biggest US naval base. It's San Diego, and geographically it's perfect. So I found how to bring recreational side to the United States. Now rehab, they're gonna come here. And first of all, obviously it's the cost. When we're doing 12 physical therapy sessions, not counting everything else, it's less expensive to fly them, to house them, to feed them, to show them. And we're not talking about the camaraderie, the environment of I have more than 100 volunteers, and I have these guys. When they come here, there's 24/7 concierge service. 24. They want to watch sunset, they want to watch moonrise, they want to watch moonset, somebody will be there. They want to take a canoe on the sea,
Wow.
we're on the Mediterranean side. They can go take a canoe out at night. In the summer it's really still, you can watch. When it's full moon, it's just really peaceful. So for somebody who had a traumatic experience to come to a peaceful place like this, it's always warm here. Like, I have to stop in July because it's really hard for anybody who has a prosthetic leg to be in this heat. And we have to stop like in February because we have a lot of rain. But in any case, we can run 10 months out of the year. So that's actually the next step. And one of the things that it was one of the ideas. Like, imagine if a person loses a limb at war, like when they come back home, they get a lot of things that you cannot do, you cannot, just a lot of you cannots. And I think a lot of people just accept it. And this experiment was awesome, that I took a kid who's never been outside of the country, and he had to make it to another country. So you go through passport controls, you go through airports, they forgot a wheelchair. And just getting through that process, by the time he came here the third time, he is completely independent. He can leave at home, fly here, go to the market, to the Friday bazaar or Tuesday bazaar. He knows where to go, how to find things. Volunteers are calling saying, look, he's not answering the phone. Like, we're saying, do you need anything? He doesn't say anything. Is everything okay? I go and I said, look, they're all worried about you. He says, Lyubim, I know the number. If I need anything, I will ask them. Just tell them they can relax. Like, I know. I go to the taxi driver. I tell them, drop me off next to where the soccer field is for the local soccer team. He lives like right next block. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that imagine if you get a guy or girl who had an amputation and they travel all the way to Turkey, they spend here time. If rehab, they'll stay here a month or more. It will be just such a mind-blowing experience. It just would be, they will come back home completely independent. Nobody will ever tell them, you cannot do this because you don't have a leg. If you're like, you know what, F you. I just went to Turkey and I seen the world and I can travel and I can do whatever, so don't tell me anything. And that's actually, our number one is traveling. He took his girlfriend to Paris. They went to Germany. Like, really, his quality of life, man, like, I am saying that I just thought, let's just see what it takes. And the thing is that it takes a long time. It takes more than a year and we were lucky because this guy is young, positive, he's always like, yeah, come on, let's go, let's do it. Anything, I want to do it, I just want to live a little more. So he progressed really fast, but number two is deaf and he's drinking and he doesn't have anything, nothing in his future, nothing. The system is not helping him. Nobody knows that he's suffering. Some jerk told him to get off the bus because, he said, active duty, you have free bus ride. And somebody told him, look, get off the bus. There are too many of you. So,
Mm.
it's a real screwed up situation. And in any case, I created this environment. Next step, I want to take it, I want to scale it. And one of the things that I solved is that I found a way. I want 100% of the, it was self-funded for more than 2 years. So everything I'm only not putting in the money, I'm putting in time, experience, everything. I know how it is built and I know how it's going to work. And one of the biggest issues I wanted to solve is that, look, if I'm doing something for veterans, it's like, that there are a lot of charities that saying, hey, look at this picture, it's so sad, help us out, give us money, or these poor children, these poor blah, 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 you fill it in. And then they get the money, and then they have offices, and then they have staff, and then they have more staff, and then they have millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions in the bank. And the problem is not going away. So like, I'm anti-charity. I am mission driven. And my thing is that whatever donations will come in the future, 100% of them will go to veterans. I cannot take a dime from that, It's not mine. I'm providing service. I understand. I have to figure it out how I will pay myself. But I think that it's time that when people are giving money to something, it has to go directly. So I have transparency. I open all my bank statements. If anybody wants to come here, see how we do it, we're open source organization. Like, I want people to come, but like you say, you're traveling, maybe you hop on the plane and come see how we operate in Turkey. And when we fly in San Diego, I think San Diego would be first part. So you have to go there and watch that too, because it's super cool, When they take off and when they come back, it's like mental orgasm times 1 million. It's just like in space, from just, you're really flying, that feeling of free flight for somebody who went through a big loss. It's a really liberating experience.
Yeah. And we're going to have in the description for this episode the Wings4Heroes.org website link. So for anyone who wants to check it out to read more about the organization, see how to support you, all that information is going to be in the description below. And I just want to again take the time to say thank you so much for what you're doing. I know you're podcast guesting to spread the word because, people need to know about this, and I think it's important. And so this isn't just for the amputees, but also for if you're the friend of one, a family member of one, please share this information with them, especially if you've seen that they have just, their life has changed. It is a life-altering event. And if you can do anything, even if it's just sharing information to try and make their life better, then you ought to do that. So, Mr. Lyubim Kogan, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story. I can tell that you're, a really good guy trying to do, like you said, serve a mission. You're mission driven. And so I really hope to continue to see how your organization expands to help even more and more veterans.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Whiskey, for having me. And for the first recreational event in San Diego, I hope to meet you there in person.
Yes, sir.
And thank you for creating this space. It's really important, because if you didn't do, like you said, it's not just doing something, everybody can do a lot and a little. And I think you're doing a lot because you create a platform where, voices can be heard. And I know I'm just looking for that one person who's going to say, okay, this sounds like a real deal. I want to go check it out. And here's the thing. All I'm asking for people is to just check it out. Like, really, what I've built is for somebody who sacrificed, and it's everything that existed was developed from the need, like follow. And what do they need? Okay, let's make this. What do they need next? Let's make this. It's not invented by some corporate strategy. It's like battlefield tested.
Right. Right. So again, thank you so much for what you do. And yeah, I hope to connect with you in the future.
Yeah, I will talk to you soon, I'm sure. Thank you so much.